Hello and welcome to the Punter, the show that likes to keep you up to date with all the sports betting action across the sporting calendar. And I'm pleased to say, joining me in the studio, Gordon Watson and Angus Loughran are here. Hopefully to mark your card with one or two winners. Flash, how's your week been so far? We had plenty of football over the course of the last few days.
Yeah, Tuesday night was very good. Wednesday just left it completely alone, but there was some good ones touched off. I mean, Wigan was 7-2 away at West Ham. That was massive, and obviously 4-1. It was put to bed very early.
There were one or two shocks midweek, Angus. Certainly, Punter's looking to back Manchester City, not just to win the game against Aston Villa in the Capital One Cup, but also to go on and win that particular tournament. Well, they've crashed and burned, haven't they?
Yeah, City going out was obviously the big story, and Leeds' performance against Everton was also the standout. Largely, I mean, that was the live game, and everyone saw it, and Leeds actually played well. Neil Warnock described it as his best ever cup win, and those that have seen Everton on the TV this year, there has been quite a lot of coverage of Everton, would have lumped on Everton because it's a realistic trophy for them to have won, and they've had a really good start to the season. So yeah, those were the two big stories, and but it's a fascinating competition, being set up more, by another big draw in the next round with Manchester United and Chelsea meeting each other.
Yeah, let's just take a look at the draw, because that, of course, is the standout tie. There is no doubt about that. And we've, of course, seen in the past, the recent past, that when it comes to the Capital One Cup, the big teams have won it, haven't they? They have focused on it. It's a cup competition that they can get rid of generally before European football starts again in the new year. So it's one that's maybe taken a high priority over maybe the FA Cup for some teams.
Well, again, I mean, you look say Arsene Wenger. Arsene Wenger's just desperate for any silverware at the moment, and this is a real opportunity for his boys because they're no longer babies. Some of these players have been playing in this tournament for like 2 or 3 years, and you see Man United play Chelsea. They're away at Reading. What an opportunity to progress further. I tipped Arsenal right at the very start, and I'm not going to go away from them.
Yeah, they take on Reading away in the next round. Let's get the latest Carling Cup outright odds, shall we? Let's hear from Nigel Seeley, the bet butler.
It's a very, very interesting market, this Capital One Cup. I'll tell you what, the thing is about it is that the favourites have gone out, Manchester City, and now bookies are vying for favouritism. There's different bookies have different favourites. Chelsea head the mark here of us at 5-1. Arsenal 11-2, their away trip to Reading. We know that Chelsea entertain Manchester United. That's why Manchester United is 7-1. I thought Manchester United looked good. They put a good, strong side against Newcastle, and 2-1. Then they were taking it seriously well. Tottenham 7-1 and Liverpool 7-1. All those 5 are very close in the betting. Bookies can't split them. I'm on Sunday. They're my tip. I backed them and QPR. I had a terrible week last week. I backed Crawley to pull off an upset and QPR to beat Reading. Awful, the Capital One Cup for me. But Sunderland is my big hope. Martin O'Neill has a fantastic record in this competition. And despite what Angus said, a home draw at Middlesbrough, I'd take that all day long.
Angus, who do you fancy for the Capital One Cup as it stands at the moment with those prices?
Well, I think Arsenal are the team to beat because, as you said, Nanda, I mean, they're desperate to get some trophy, and it really hurt losing to Birmingham a couple of years ago. That was a result that wasn't expected, especially even if you'd been at the game, you couldn't see how Birmingham would have turned it round, and it was a big defeat for them. So, they'd be my favourites at this stage, especially with the other way. But you have to look at what Nigel said. Sunderland, Martin O'Neill's got a tremendous record. It's not as easy a draw as Nigel thinks Middlesbrough at home, because it's a one-off game against a rival just down the road from Teesside, but they'd have been happy to be at home rather than at the Riverside.
Let's just spin it back to Arsenal for a second, because we can move on to the Premier League here. And Flash, it's interesting that the market is shaping up nicely, isn't it, now? Because we've not just got Manchester City and Manchester United at the top of the market, but Chelsea have come into it, obviously, because they're unbeaten so far. And Arsenal with some impressive performances away at Man City last weekend, and of course they beat Liverpool at Anfield. Suddenly we've got, maybe 4 title contenders.
No, I still think we've only got 2, but I think Arsenal make it more interesting. I think Arsenal are far stronger in depth than Chelsea. I think Chelsea are a massive lay. I think they've got to a place now where they're just too flimsy. If they lose a couple of injuries, there's no real depth, experience or strength in their squad. So they lose Torres, I think they will struggle. So for me, they're a massive lay.
Let's take a look at the latest title odds. Spotler.
I'll tell you what, I think the market's wrong. I've been saying it for weeks and weeks and weeks. I think Manchester City are too short. I think there should be bigger. I think Man United at 7-4. I think we're shorter favourites. Man City have got big problems there. I really don't think he's his best team. I don't think he's getting on well behind the scenes. I think he's massively under pressure. 66-1 to lose his job. We'll come on to that a bit later on. I think City at 15-8 should be bigger. Man United are favourites 7-4. We know the riches they have, the attacking ability they have. You go through Welbeck, Hernandez, all those guys, whereas Chelsea only have Sturridge and Torres. Arsenal have been the most popular back in the last couple of days. Very, very popular, into 11-1, into single figures, and they should have got something last week. Should have actually won the game. But at the moment, I think Arsenal are a bit of value, and Manchester United take on Man City. All is not well.
4-horse race, 2-horse race, Angus, how do you see it?
Well, you'd think the Manchester clubs would have the massive edge, but I must admit Arsenal starts the season has been in stark contrast to what it was last year, particularly defensively. And I think that we're now coming to one of the defining matches so far of the season, Arsenal-Chelsea. And on face value, you'd have to fancy Arsenal, but you don't often get chances for Chelsea to be such a big price, and they've got the players on the day. But what Flash was saying, strength in depth, the Chelsea bench doesn't look as strong as it's been in previous years. And Arsenal have got good team spirit, so this is a really big game for Arsenal, and it's certainly making it more interesting.
Let's get to the relegation odds. The Butler's got the details when it comes to the other end of the table.
Yeah, the newly promoted teams head the betting here. Reading and Southampton. Southampton had a big result in last week, obviously winning 4-1 against Aston Villa. But just calm down a little bit. There's euphoria over that result. But they beat Aston Villa at home. They go to Everton the weekend, and I think normal service will resume. Norwich, even money. Their away form is terrible, shocking, awful away form. Their home form may get them out of it. Reading are the favourites 8-11. I think the value lies down here. I think Swansea at 4-1. We know they started off very well against Queen's Park Rangers. They won 5-0. Great performance. But I tell you what, the bubble's bursting there. Their style of play is not so great, and I think at the weekend they were a big lay. I think Swansea at a value 4-1. QPR desperate for a win in any competition. Mark Hughes under serious pressure. They've been popular all week at 7-2. Wigan 9-5 again. We always seem to leave it up. But I think these three here are a little bit short. I think the value lies down the bottom. I think Swansea at 4-1 would be where I'll be putting my money, rather than the Reading at 8-11 or Southampton at 5-4.
Yeah, Swansea are interesting. Flash, they've perhaps flattered to deceive a little bit because of that opening day win, but certainly against Everton last weekend they were pretty poor, weren't they?
Yeah, and those who like their the things that went on last year that may happen again this year. I mean, Bolton went to Queen's Park Rangers and won 4 or 5, and they got relegated. Swansea went and done exactly the same, and there I think they're on free fall. I think there's a prototype that Villa and Everton have shown teams on how to play Swansea, and that's press them high up the pitch, make them go from back to front in one. They haven't got a target man. So for me, 4-1, I went Swansea and Norwich prior to the season. My other one was West Brom, so I'm hoping they free fall as well.
Angus, what do you think?
Well, I think West Brom have been a joy, really. They've started well under Steve Clarke. I mean, yeah, the teams I'd be looking at, I mean, can Wigan keep on staying up? I've got to be honest. I've been very negative about Wigan over the last few seasons, and they've done me wrong every year. But I think that Wigan are going to be in the mix. I think Norwich have got to win these home matches, because away from home they're not picking anything up. So, I mean, tomorrow is a very interesting game on Saturday. Norwich, Liverpool, both ends of the table. I mean, you know, a draw probably doesn't suit either team.
And who would have thought that this fixture at Carrow Road, Norwich-Liverpool, would be a 6-pointer?
Yeah, certainly Liverpool fans probably don't see it that way. Next manager to go, we heard from the Butler briefly there, talking about Roberto Mancini. He's under a bit of pressure, isn't he? I think.
Yeah, and if you're talking about being like 50-1 and upwards, then there's worse bets out there, because he's struggling. The team, I don't think they're handling it very well of being champions. It's okay when you've got nothing to lose and you can go free-flowing, but all of a sudden they've been in front 4 or 5 times and only gone on and won one of the games. So for me, that tells you they're really nervy, and I think that they're struggling with leaders.
It's interesting, isn't it, Roberto Mancini just being touted around as potentially a value bet. Let's get the market. Butler.
Yeah, huge value. The problem is who's going to go in and replace the job. That's the thing. They've got to get someone out of a big contract. But he's valued at 50-1. There's no doubt about it. There's problems there. And his start conceding those goals isn't that great. And a big game in Europe as well in midweek. Big few days for Mancini. Mark Hughes under huge pressure. The likes of Harry Redknapp waiting in the wings to go into QPR. QPR need a result. They need a result quick. Monday night they're live on the TV. He has to get a result. Nigel Atkins, they were 1-0 down at half-time last week, Southampton against Aston Villa. He was matched at 5-4. 5-4 to go. Win 4-1, 4-1. Shows you what a fickle game this is. Sam Allardyce was backed into 7-4 favourite to lose his job some 2 or 3 weeks ago, and AVB is always lurking around there. Another manager under pressure, Brendan Rodgers, 16-1. Compare that to another manager who's not under under pressure. 8-year contract for Alan Pardew, 40 to 1. But for me, Mancini at 50s is a little bit of value. And in the Championship, they're betting on managers to go in there. You can back 66 to 1. Kenny Jackett. That is a great bet.
Angus, what about Roberto Mancini? I mean, we're not saying he's going to go, but just 50 to 1 does look big, doesn't it? Does it?
Yeah, well, I mean, with a bit of luck, I think that what's happened at City is they've seen what's happened down the road with Sir Alex Ferguson's longevity at Manchester United, and they've suddenly realised, look, do we really need to be sacking another manager at any stage? So Mancini, who I think he'd have been under pressure if they hadn't won the league last season. I think that things might have changed. I just think it's tense there at the moment. It's not quite the stability that you'd want, but I'd be surprised if he's the first to go. But saying that in football, you can never say never because strange things happen. Yeah. But I would think that someone else will lose his job before Mancini.
Yeah, Manchester City, of course, are unbeaten in the Premier League. Let's not forget about that. There are 4 teams unbeaten at the moment, and there's various speciality markets going on regarding this particular run for those 4 sides. Let's get the latest prices on the team that will have that unbeaten record the longest this season. Butler.
Yeah, usually in football, in this kind of season, there's usually hardly any teams unbeaten, but the Premier League, there's 4, and Arsenal the favourite 7 to 5 here. Surprisingly, Sunderland 25 to 1. With Arsenal playing Chelsea at the weekend, there's a chance that one of those could go. So I think Manchester City as well. I think they've got a tough game at Fulham. So I think Sunderland at 25 to 1, who at the weekend I think are one of my bankers, could become in a 2-runner race against either Manchester City or also the winner of the either Arsenal-Chelsea game and Sunderland. So I think Sunderland at 25 to 1 in this race. They may not be the most fashionable club, but they know how to get results. They've been drawing a lot of games. 25 to 1, Sunderland looks a bit of value to me out these 4.
Could be the last team to win and last team to lose. That would be an interesting one. They could land a double.
It's 4 draws, isn't it? So I mean, we've got to look at the fixtures, and when it comes to Sunderland, I mean, they do take on Manchester City, as we can see here. Manchester City have got Sunderland at home after they take on Fulham away. I mean, for me, that will probably see the end of Sunderland's. I don't know.
Yeah, and even if they get through that, then they've got Newcastle at home. Exactly, you wouldn't want to have that. For me, it's Arsenal. I think Arsenal will beat Chelsea tomorrow, so that knocks out one of the unbeaten sides. They'll go to West Ham, and I think they'll avoid defeat there, and they'll go to Norwich and win. So, for me, I think Arsenal, I thought they'd be odds on.
I mean, we talked about Manchester City quite a lot already. I mean, that run to me doesn't look particularly taxing for City. I mean, if they click, Angus.
Yeah, I mean, they could lose to Fulham because you can always lose at Fulham at the Craven Cottage, but you'd expect them to get something there. You'd expect them not to lose to Sunderland. And, West Brom proved that they can be a handful as they showed against Liverpool, so you never know there. But, it would be City for me out of the fixtures. City or Arsenal for me out of the fixtures.
Yeah, Arsenal take on Chelsea, as we've mentioned. Let's hear from the butler on what is the live game on Sky, of course, 12:45 kick-off tomorrow. Nigel.
Yeah, it's a massive game, a massive big man. It's a big test for both these sides. They've sort of flattered. I think Chelsea are flattered with the results they've got because they're playing a very weak and they're playing very low-level sides. But they've got a real test here. Arsenal 5 to 4. If you look at the stats, whenever Didier Drogba played against Chelsea, they always seem to do well in this fixture. When he wasn't there, they didn't do very good at all. When Chelsea go without Didier Drogba, any injury to Torres, as we said, they were flaky. 13 to 5 Chelsea, 12 to 5 the draw. I think there'd be money for Arsenal, but I've got to go for the draw at 12 to 5.
Flash.
Arsenal. I think that Chelsea about 2 years ago, where Arsenal were. I think Arsenal now got good balance. I think they've got a lot of trust throughout the side, whereas I don't think Roberto Di Matteo knows his first team squad or his first 11, and I think that he plays too many players that are alike.
Angus?
Well, I think the draw is tremendous value because it's a result Chelsea would take now. It's probably a result that in previous years Arsenal might have settled for, but now they're going to look to try and win this game, but they wouldn't want to lose it. So, I would say it's a neutral point, 0-0 or 1-1. I think Arsenal's defence have certainly improved dramatically. It's been a big wake-up call. They've been free-flowing up front, but not against the bigger teams away. And, they've scored 6 goals, great, in the last 2 home games. I don't see it being that sort of game. But remember the game at Stamford Bridge, which was a lunchtime kick-off last year. 0-0 was predicted, and look how many goals we had.
Yeah,
so
it was plenty.
It could go both ways, but I think it's going to start cautious and probably finish cautious.
Yes, it could be interesting. Yeah, no one's really predicting goals in that particular match. That's the Arsenal-Chelsea clash at the Emirates. And that was all the latest outright markets and the big capital fixture this weekend, previewed by the Punter. Welcome to the Punter, the show that likes to keep you up to date with all the sports betting action across the sporting calendar. And there are plenty of Premier League football matches over the course of the weekend. Lots, of course, on Saturday, as per usual. Pleased to say that Gordon Watson and Angus Loughran with me in the studio to hopefully pick one or two winners. We're going to start with Fulham versus Manchester City. Flash, this is a difficult one, isn't it, for City, because Fulham have got a great home record.
Yeah, never. I say every week, never oppose Fulham at the Cottage. I will not be opposing them tomorrow. I expect this to be very few goals, and I think Fulham can obviously get something out of it. Whether they win 1-0, maybe 2-0, but I don't expect it to be over 2.5. Let's
get the match odds. Let's hear from the bet butler, Nigel Seeley.
Yeah, Fulham are probably outside the top 5, the best home team in the division, and you can get them at 15-4, 7-2, 4-1, that kind of price with other bookmakers. The draw here, 11-4. Manchester City 10-11. Last season it was 2-2. City put on a fantastic performance in the first half. Fulham come back and got the 2 goals in the second half. The thing is here, Fulham have a terrible record at home to Manchester City. They've only won 1 in the last 12 matches. A lot of them have been draws. That's why the draw for me looks value at that 11-4.
Angus, how do you see it?
I don't think City will lose, but I mean, you know, the draw is a much more appealing price at 11-4 than City at 10-11. But you know, Fulham are hard to beat, but they don't play well against Manchester City traditionally, and I don't see City losing.
Everton versus Southampton. We can take a look at next. Flash, do you see Southampton getting anything that goes apart?
I do. Yeah, I think they match up brilliantly for, especially if they only play one up front. I expect both teams to score, and without my heart rule in my head, I think it'll be a draw. I think Southampton can definitely get something and build. Last week they obviously came back, scored 4 second-half goals. They will score goals. That is no doubt about that. So for me, I've gone for the draw.
Lots of punters going to like Everton though, because they have started well, Angus.
Yeah, they're going to like them, but not the price. I mean, they're very short. They're like 4-9 best. I mean, you know, they should win. I think Everton should win. But I have been quite impressed with Southampton away from home in their attacking sense. But Everton at home this season have been good. I mean, they beat Manchester United. They were unlucky not to beat Newcastle.
Both night games, though, we must mention that, because they are a different kettle of fish under the lights at Goodison, rather than a 3 o'clock kick-off on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's more negative. It's a lunchtime kick-off. And you're right. I mean, I remember at the beginning of last season, I went to Everton QPR when really the QPR were there for the taking, and Everton actually got beat that day, which was quite a surprise. And they do put in 1 or 2 strange performances, but I thought they were very good against Swansea last week away from home.
I must admit, sometimes I think Everton are opposable when they are short. Let's get the prices from the butler.
Oh, Everton are very short. I think they'll be everyone's bankers in the weekend. I'm not quite sure whether they're going to bet at the prices 4-9. I think 4-9 is very short. 4-1 the draw, 8-1 Southampton. I personally think Everton will win. I think they'll probably win it. I don't think Southampton will score, even though they have the attacking threat of Lambert, and they only know 1 star. But Everton 4-9. Yelovich is back. Fellaini looks unplayable. Everton will win, and the lights will go in the last 5 minutes. They scored 2 in the last 5 minutes.
Norwich-Liverpool next up. Flash, Liverpool haven't won yet in the league.
Oh, yeah, I've gone for the draw just because neither of them can score goals. I think Norwich is a tough place to go. Everyone gets up for it. This is still, even though Liverpool in the bottom 3, this is still probably one of their biggest fixtures of the year. They'll be up for it. Draw.
Angus, who do you like in this one?
Well, I mean, you know, like if you thought you could get 5-6 Liverpool to win at Norwich, it's such an important game for Liverpool. I mean, I can't stress out. I mean, for both teams, I mean, a draw would suit neither. So, and normally I'd have thought it might have been a poor game, but I think it's going to be an interesting game, and I think Liverpool are going to win. I think they really need it badly.
Surely we can't back Liverpool at the prices, can we, Butler?
Every single week they get backed. Every time we sit here and say they keep backing, they keep losing, they are going to be backed again tomorrow, because who would have thought there'd be 5-6 away at Norwich? I think this is a very, very poor Norwich side. Liverpool haven't had the results they deserve. I mean, mate, they were much a better side against Manchester United. A dubious penalty and a sending off cost them there. 5-6 Liverpool, I think that's a great bet. I think they will win. They will certainly get backed, and I think Norwich are in for big, big trouble this season.
God, I must admit, I can't possibly back Liverpool at odds on. I just cannot possibly back them, even if they might win. Let's move into the game. Reading against Newcastle next. Flash, what do you like?
Reading struggled against Tottenham. If they put anywhere near that performance in again, then they're going to get beat. I think Newcastle got goals in them, got creativity. Newcastle, they replicate a lot of what Tottenham do. They've got good ball players in midfield. For me, Newcastle away.
Angus?
I think it was very significant, even though they lost in midweek, that Papa Cisse scored. They needed that. I'd be surprised if he doesn't start tomorrow with Denver Bar and Cisse up front. And Newcastle are an attractive team to watch at the moment. and they're playing for places, buoyed up with the new contract for the manager. It's a chance for them. They don't often win away from home. But last season they turned the butt round and had some good away performances. I think they'll get something out of the game.
Let's get to the butler, Nigel.
I think this is the hardest game on the coupon. I really do. I think you can make cases of both sides. Reading obviously come back and beat my team QPR 3-2, cost me a few quid. Newcastle 6-4, Reading 2-1. I think the draw represents a bit of value 12-5. I think both teams have got goals in it. I can see a high-scoring game. I think 2-2 and around about 14, 16-1 could be a decent bet. Bar and Cisse are always going to be a threat, and Reading do score goals at home. So I'm going for the draw 12-5 and have a couple of quid on a 2-2 draw at a nice big price.
I must admit, I think Newcastle are stand out there at 6-4. I think they're a fair price. Angus, let's move on to the game at the Britannia. Stoke versus Swansea. We've been a little bit down about Swansea on this show. Do you see them getting a result against Stoke?
Well, I would think this is one of the bankers. I would think Stoke would win this game. But I might save on the 0-0. It's one of those, I don't see this being pretty. I mean, if there's one game, I'm given a choice of one game and miss on the coupon this week, it probably would be this one. But saying that, Stoke need a win. I mean, they put in one or two good performances, but they need a win. And, you can get in a rot without winning. It's an important game for them. Swansea would love a draw. Their away record's basically been very poor. Queen's Park Rangers aside, what they pick up on the road has been almost non-existent. So Stoke, for me, comfortable win.
Flash?
Stoke, my best bet of the weekend in the Premiership, without a doubt. We said earlier, Swansea, you've got to press them high up the pitch. One thing that they'll make sure they do, Stoke, is put them under pressure, high up the pitch. So for me, Stoke win.
Let's get the prices from the butler.
Totally agree with the lads. I think Stoke are an absolute great bet today. Odds on 19-20, around about even money, that kind of price. I think they're very strong against intimidating. We know they never lose at home. A fantastic record at home. 5-2 is the draw. Swansea 7-2. No value for me. You're there lay all day long. I think they should be a lot bigger than that. I think they're in big trouble, Swansea. The only thing I would say about it, if you look at the head-to-head, Swansea have got a good record against Stoke, and the thing is that goes out my little element about one big team against a smaller side.
Butler, tell us about the prices for the match featuring Sunderland and Wigan.
This is my second best bet. I think Sunderland at home, I think it's about time Sunderland win a game. They haven't got a terrible losing. They haven't won a game in 13, 14 matches. Not losing, but they haven't won one for a long time. Longest in Martin Neal's management. It's going to end this weekend. 11-10 Sunderland, a massive price. They've drawn a lot of games. They're scoring goals. Their top four, their front four is as good as anybody. I think it's Sessegnon, Fletcher and the wingers. 11-10 Sunderland, my second best bet of the weekend.
Quick predictions, Flash.
I think Sunderland 2-0, 2-1.
Angus?
I think Sunderland will hope, but they're becoming the Pools panel team at the moment, aren't they? So it was a Pools panel away defeat at Derby that cost Malcolm Crosby his job for Sunderland 20 years ago. But I wonder whether that could end up being expensive for them. But they need a win, and then again, at odds against, I'd like to back them.
And finally, Manchester United versus Spurs on Saturday. Flash, who do you like in the big one?
Man United, home win. I think they've got the daylight between them and Man City. They'll make sure they don't slip up. Home win.
Angus?
I think you've got to look to Man United to beat Spurs at home. Simply the history book says that. Spurs very rarely get anything.
Butler, what about the prices?
History book is going right out that window. I tell you what, I fancy laying Manchester United. I really do. I think Vidic is a big loss. Whenever I see the name Johnny Evans in the starting 11, you see their price get bigger and bigger and bigger. The betting public, don't fancy Johnny Evans. I don't either. 8-13 Manchester United. I think it's going to drift. You've got to also remember they've got Champions League matches in the midweek as well. I think it's a huge week for them. Tottenham 11-2. The draw 16-5. But I'll be a layer of Manchester United. I think they might nick it, but I might be late. I'll be out before they do.
Yeah, interesting. Manchester United have got that fantastic record against Tottenham, no doubt about that. That'll be one of the big punting matches of the weekend. Well, that was the punter's view of all the Saturday games in the Premier League. Welcome along to the Punter, the show that keeps you up to date with all the sports betting action across the sporting calendar. I'm pleased to say that joining me in the studio, Gordon Watson and Angus Loughran are here, hopefully to point in the right direction when it comes to some of the big games coming up and when it comes to the Sunday fixtures. Flash, intriguing one, Midlands derby, Aston Villa against West Brom. I think we've all been a little bit surprised with how West Brom have started because they've been excellent under Steve Clarke.
Yeah, they have at home. I mean, they've not let a goal in, and I like Villa though. Villa did really well against Newcastle away. Should have got something. Then they put Swansea to the sword. They outplayed Southampton 1-0 up at half time. Then obviously we know got beat 4-1. Went to the Etihad, got Agbon Lahore back. I've got Villa to win this game.
Certainly that result in midweek in the Capital One Cup, Angus, a real shot in the arm really for Paul Lambert's side, because I just started to think they were very similar to last season when they only just stayed up.
Yeah, I mean, they got tremendous support. That Swansea game was a really big vote of confidence behind the manager. But then the local people I spoke to in the Midlands said they were absolutely knocked by what happened against Southampton, even though, as Flash said, they played really well in the first half and were the better side by a long, long way. This is a good local match. West Brom will be up for it, but I'm surprised that Villa are a bigger price as they are. And purely by the prices, I would have expected Villa to be shorter. And at 6-4, they'll carry my money.
Let's get the prices from the bet butler, Nigel Seeley.
Yeah, I hate to agree with the boys here, but I think Aston Villa are a decent bet for this one. I think West Brom are very good at home, as we all know. Away from home, they're not that great. 6-4, Aston Villa. You know, they didn't play exceptionally very well at all in the second half against Southampton. Fell to pieces, but they came back and beat the champions, Manchester City, in the Capital One Cup. A great result. Great. The momentum behind the place must be huge. I think if you look at the record, the stats in this game, I think 5 of the last 6 have been 2-1 to either side. So if you're going to have a little bet, Mac 2-1. I think 2-1 here could be a decent bet for Aston Villa at 6-4. The draw 12-5, and West Brom a little bit bigger than 2-1 at 21-10. But it's all Aston Villa for us all the way.
Are they a better side than last year, Villa under Paul Lambert, or are they very, very similar, do you think?
Well, they seem to be working harder together. That's been the success that they've built on, is because they hunt in packs. They don't let one of their teammates go and do a few doggies. They all close down together. They set traps, and they're solid. And honestly, hard work does get you a long way, especially in the Premiership.
Will there be goals in the game? Let's hear from the butler once again, this time on the over and unders markets.
Well, as I've said, the stats say there's going to be over 2.5 goals. I think it's over 2.5 goals. I never usually like backing over 2.5 goals. I always like the under, but that trend is set. The value sometimes now is over. There's a lot more goals than it used to be. Over 2.5 goals at 10-11 with under at even money. I think the thing is here, West Brom, there's doubts around Olsen, the centre-half. Big player for them. Key player. If he doesn't play, I think Agbonlahore's pace and Darren Bent could cause problems. So in that case, I'm going to go for over 2.5 goals here at 10-11. Over 3.5 goals, not so optimistic about that. 13-5. Over 1.5 goals looks an absolute shoe-in at 2-7. But I fancy goals. If the stats tell you there's going to be goals in this game, and I'm going to go for goals.
That's the Midlands derby. We've got a London derby as well, of course. West Ham taking on Queen's Park Rangers. That's the Monday night game. This is an interesting one, Flash, because Sam Allardyce initially came in for a lot of pressure and a lot of stick from the West Ham fans. You tend to feel he's won some of them around, if not all of them around. But Mark Hughes is under real pressure at QPR. Yeah,
well, first of all, West Ham, it's a role reversal from last year. Last year they got all their points on the road. This year they're getting their points at home. But Queen's Park Rangers, they're so desperate. Desperation will see them through. I've got Queen's Park Rangers winning this game quite comfortably.
I mean, they've got quality in their squad, haven't they, Queen's Park Rangers? More quality than West Ham, you'd say. Yeah,
they've got a lot of quality, but I mean, does he know what his team is? I mean, you know, I don't think he does. I think they've been unlucky with injuries. I think it's going to be 0-0. I think Sam will set up to be a tight game. Don't see many chances in the game. I think QPR will huff and they'll puff, but I don't think they'll get anything. And I think 0-0 for me.
Have they got the quality to stay up, QPR, do you think? Because they haven't clicked at all, have they, this season?
Well, to be quite, how they stayed up last year is nothing short of a miracle. I mean, it happened. It really all hinged on an inspired last 20 minutes against Liverpool at home when they came from an almost impossible position to nick a win, which was completely and utterly undeserved on the night, and that has earmarked some inspired performances. It'll be hard for them, very hard.
Let's get the prices on this London derby. Let's hear from Nigel Seeley, the bet butler.
Yeah, all week I've had QPR down as bankers for this game. I fancied them all strong. Then when I saw the performance against Reading and read the reports, not for me at all. QPR 23-20. I think Angus is absolutely right. Mark Hughes doesn't know his best side. I think the players think they're a lot better than what they actually are, and they're not playing as a team. West Ham 11-4. They haven't scored away from home this season in 2 games. Obviously, one of them was a 0-0 draw. I think the 0-0 was a massive runner. I really do. Draw 12-5. I can see the tension at Rangers. And when you go Loftus Road, I can see the pressure getting on them, and they get on the Mark Hughes' back. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting game, this one. I know Harry Redknapp, I believe, could be waiting in the wings. I think if they don't get anything in 2 or 3 games, it's going to be all change at Queen's Park Rangers. But a team that haven't won this season in any competition, 11-10, not for me.
Butler, what about the overs and unders market?
Well, I mean, I'm going back to the old strategy, piling on the under 4 to 5. I think it's one of the best bets of the weekend. I don't think it's going to be you're going to get rich. I don't think QPR score many goals at all. I think that in Cisse and Zamora, they don't have a quality pairing. I don't think they play well together. I think it's Andy Johnson and Zamora is a better formation they have. I think West Ham will go there very defensive. They got no Andy Carroll. I think they'll play 5 at the back and 5 in midfield and 1 up front. I think under 2.5 goals here at 4 to 5 is an absolute knocking bet and one of my best bets of the weekend.
Flash?
Yeah, over 2.5 for me, because again, I always think that you go to Loftus Road under the lights, it's a bit like Goodison. They do perform, they will score goals. Both of them are defensively quite weak. They've got a lot of injuries in both them positions. So for me, I've got Queen's Park Rangers winning it and over 2.5.
That's the Premier League. Let's move on to the Champions League. European action, of course, coming next midweek. And Manchester United in action. We can talk about the game against Cluj, the Romanian side, who pulled off a terrific performance to beat Braga away from home in their first group game. Yeah,
they beat Braga 2-0 and only had 33% of the game, so that is a real snatch and grab. And Man United, they didn't put up no shakes. They weren't quality against Galatasaray. Could easily have not won that game. So you've got to then think that Man United, they might just focus them. They need to go there and win. And if they win it, they can then start slackening off towards the end of the group. But for me, I'll go Man United.
In the past, certainly the recent past, Alex Ferguson maybe has been guilty of taking these group games a little bit too lightly. We saw last season, of course, knocked out at the group stage. He's not going to make that same mistake again, is he, Angus?
No, I don't think so, because I know what happened. Barley, I mean, he never saw it. He'd like to be able to go into the last match day knowing he's through. Then you can rest. Then you can play the team you want, and it's a huge advantage. Cluj's win was a big shock because everyone who I spoke to thought Braga were going to be the danger in this group, and they were going to be hard to beat. So they play Cluj away from home. If they can get 3 points, they've then got a home and away against Braga, which they should come out the better of those. And then they've got a lovely little finish to the group, Galatasaray and away in Cluj at home. I think they'll be fine. So they don't want any chances taken. They're going to play a decent side. I think they're going to win.
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever heard anyone say a trip to Galatasaray is a lovely end to the group. Anyway, let's get the latest prices on this one. Butler.
Well, Manchester United are favourites, but really I think they look very, very short favourites. 4 to 6. I think that's a little bit too short for me. I certainly wouldn't be backing it. I think Manchester United, away from home in Europe, play a totally different game. They go there to win 1-0, maybe get the 3 points, or maybe even get a draw. I think the draw is a huge run here at 3-1. Cluj didn't have any possession in their opening game against Braga, but he got the result, 2-0. This is going to be like an absolute FA Cup final, a World Cup final, the biggest game in their history. They're not going to lie down. I think it's a massive run of the draw at 3-1. And I think Man United will be happy with a draw and move on to the next game. 4 to 6 Man United, no value at all for me. Draw 3-1, definitely where I'm going to be hit with a few quid.
Interesting, isn't it? Manchester United are odds on away from home in Europe, because if you've been backing United at that sort of price recently, you've been doing your money.
Yeah, but again, I think that Sir Alex is going to make sure they get focused, because if they get a win here and then they take 4 points out of a possible 6 home and away at Braga, they're sitting on 10 points from 4 games. The cigar's out and they're ready to focus on the knockout stages.
Can United win the Champions League this season, Angus?
Well, they can, because I mean, but you get the feeling that it might be a similar scenario to 2 years ago, and a one-off game if they got to the final against Barcelona or Real Madrid. On their day, they've got the players to win it. I mean, it's not necessarily the best team that wins the Champions League. I don't think Chelsea were the best team that won it. I don't think United were the best team that won it when they won it in '99. They had a bit of luck when they won on penalties. It's never been easy. But the Wembley factor, if it's against anyone, even Barcelona again, you'd still think you couldn't say they couldn't win at Wembley. It's a big factor for it to be in England.
Speaking of English teams in action in the Champions League, Chelsea travelled to Denmark to take on North Zealand. I mean, if we know anything about Chelsea at the moment, they are a little bit flaky, I think. I mean, the game against Juventus, certainly we saw them let the Italians back in. Obviously, North Zealand are not Juventus's class, but again, do you really want to take Chelsea at short prices?
No, not at all. I mean, I think they'll probably win, only because of the quality. But Denmark's a horrible place to go. They get so buoyant. This is like their cup final. They are brought up on British football, and obviously with Chelsea being a Champions League, they will raise their game. And again, we don't know what sort of Chelsea side they're going to put out, because obviously how they're going to come out the Arsenal game.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see exactly. But you would have thought the fact that they've drawn that game against Juventus means that the pressure's on Roberto Di Matteo to win this fixture.
Yeah, I would have. If the game had been played in their own stadium, it would have been a lot harder for Chelsea. But it's not. They're playing in the Parken Stadium in Copenhagen, which is a bigger atmosphere. The pitch is tremendous there. I think that will suit Chelsea much better. I think that's a big advantage for them.
Let's get the prices, Butler.
There's an advantage as an advantage, but would you be backing Chelsea at 1-3 in this game? Very, very, very short price. I think that's far, far too short. But the case for me is the draw at 4-1. I tell you what, I do think Chelsea, though, on a serious level, I actually think Chelsea will win the game. But I couldn't back them on 1-3. But I don't think it's going to be embarrassing. I think Chelsea will probably win the game just by 1 goal, because I don't think they've got goals in the side. So I think 1-0 win and around about 7-1 is definitely the best way to play the game on that kind of price, rather than steaming into this 1-3 Chelsea. Odds on aways, first way to the betting poorhouse, and 1-3 Chelsea. You may be getting the winners. You may get it right this time, but you'll do your money long term if you back 1-3 Chelsea in matches like this.
Chelsea, of course, are the European champions. I mean, they can't do it again, can they?
No,
Flash?
no way. I mean, the two sides I'd put up against, obviously you got your Barcelona, then I'd go Juventus and Man City.
I guess, Chelsea can't possibly
Well, you say they can't
play the same way and get all the way through.
I don't think so. But again, if they end up in a Wembley final, they'll be hard to beat.
Have they got the firepower? People talk about.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But you never know. That Champions League, no team's ever successfully defended it. But it would be a very big advantage. Chelsea got a great record at Wembley, and if they were playing at Wembley, it would be a big advantage for them.
Chaps, thanks for now. Well, that was the Champions League games previewed featuring Manchester United and Chelsea from the Punter. Welcome along to the Punter, the show that keeps you up to date with all the sports betting action across the sporting calendar. I'm pleased to say that in the studio, Gordon Watson and Angus Loughran with me to take a look at some of the key European fixtures featuring British sides. Flash, we're going to talk about Celtic next. They travel to take on Spartak Moscow. We know that Celtic have got a terrible record when it comes to European games away from home. And Spartak, I don't want to say unluckily beaten by Barcelona, because Barcelona turned on the afterburners and eventually overcame Spartak. But, they had chances to win at the Camp Nou, didn't they?
Yeah, and the big thing with Spartak Moscow is that when you score 2 goals, it gives you a massive amount of confidence, whether you win, lose or draw. Spartak Moscow getting 2 goals at Barcelona is a little bit like Southampton getting 2 goals and still getting beat at Man City. So for me, even though they got beat, they will take a lot out of it, and it will give them a lot of confidence going against a weak Celtic side.
Sounds like this could be one of your bankers midweek.
Yeah, again, there's no big price, but I'll definitely want to be with Moscow over Celtic every day of the week.
Angus, how do you see this one? It's going to be difficult for Celtic to get.
It's going to be difficult. It's going to start 0-0, and Celtic will hope it finishes 0-0. But you'd have to think that Moscow would be good enough to score. Any positive result for Celtic would be a huge one, especially with the next 2 fixtures being home and away to Barcelona.
Yeah, just those small games against Barcelona. Let's get the latest prices with this one, though. Let's hear from Nigel Seeley, the bet butler.
Yeah, we're talking about odds-on shots in Europe and not to touch them. We'll get involved in this one. 8-13 Spartak Moscow. They will win. It's just about a question of how many goals. I think to score 2 goals against Barcelona. I think on their team sheet, can have Aidan McGeady going against his old club. I think they've got the quality Spartak Moscow to beat the Celtic side. The fact that Celtic aren't playing week in, week out, the tough challenges that they have against Rangers season, I think will let them down when they go into the real big games. And going to Moscow is a tough call. 8-13 Spartak Moscow, the draw at 3-1 and Celtic at 5s. I can't make a case for anything other than a home win, and I'm going to be on big scores, 2-3, 4-0.
It's going to be easy, according to the butler. Angus, is it going to be easy? Or?
I think it's going to be 1-0. I think if Nigel wants to back the big scores, they'll lay him all day. I just think this looks like an unders match, and Celtic being unlucky and losing 1-0.
We've talked about the fact that Rangers aren't in the SPL anymore, and it's affecting Celtic, isn't it? Already we've seen them drop points in the SPL when maybe last season, previous seasons, they wouldn't have done so.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think they've took their foot off the gas, and he's got an unbelievably tough job, Neil Lennon. It's not as easy as you think getting players up for games when they're expected to win week in, week out. It's different when you've got Rangers in there because they need to perform, because they're coming at 5 o'clock. They need to have matched or bettered Rangers' result. They've got nothing like that this year. So for me, I think they're a couple of yards short.
Celtic are going to struggle away from home. That's what we reckon. What about Arsenal at home against Olympiacos, a side that they beat in the competition last season? Olympiacos have started well in their Greek top flight, but Arsenal in form. What do you think, Flash?
I think this could be 5. I've seen Olympiacos and a few of the other ones when they come to the Emirates, they lay down. They defend deep, they ping it long, they don't really come out their holes, and they wait for a 1-2 of Arsenal to get in round the back of them. So for me, it's Arsenal all the way, up 4 or 5.
We've seen it time and time again, haven't we? In Athens, they're different prospects. But
yeah,
when they come away from home.
And again, this will be one where Arsene Wenger will know that a win here, be very important. Psychologically, they want to get through and they want to win the group. Remember, it is important to win the group because the second leg of your last 16 matches at home, which is definitely an advantage historically, and also you avoid some of the big teams. So Arsenal will be doing everything they can to win this game and make sure that they can win this section.
Butler, what about the prices for this one?
Well, I can't believe that Arsenal are a bigger price for this game than Chelsea are away. I think it's 2 to 5. I know it's short, but 2 to 5 is a shoo-in for me. Arsenal win the game. It's just a question of how many goals. They always beat teams like this at the Emirates. They always put on a performance. They always score goals. They've got goals in them. We know how bad the Greeks are on travelling. They're not bad at home, but away from home in Europe, they always flatter deceive. 8 to 1, the Olympiacos. I think a few die-hard Greeks in London will be back in that, but they're the only ones who'll be fielding it. The draw 4 to 1. It'll be everybody's bet on all their trebles and acres in the Champions League, and it will oblige. It's just a question of how many they'll score by. I agree with Flash. I don't think 5. I think 5 might be a little bit optimistic, but certainly over 2.5 goals and maybe over 3.5 goals. The Olympiacos might nick one, but it's going to be 4-1, 3-1. I think both teams to score at a decent price, which is very popular with punters, could be a runner in this one.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there seems, Angus, to be more of a fear factor with European teams going to the Emirates than maybe Premier League sides.
Yeah, well, I mean, I went to that Arsenal Olympiacos game last year, and I mean, to be quite honest, it was like a Carling Cup tie in the end. Olympiacos will have massive support, but mind you, Coventry had massive support there the other night, so look what that score was. The way Arsenal are playing, especially if they get a positive result against Chelsea, the place will be rocking, and I think they'll win.
What about Manchester City versus Borussia Dortmund? We've talked about City over the last few weeks. They're conceding goals. Dortmund, of course, were good last season. Not so much this campaign. Bayern Munich are certainly outperforming them at the moment.
Oh yeah, Dortmund are struggling. They've lost like 2, 3, maybe 4 of their influential players. And I, as I said earlier, my best 2 teams outside Barcelona to win the Champions League are Man City and Juventus. And Man City, for me, will win this game. And I expect Man City to push Real Madrid all the way in this group because they score goals.
Desperate and unlucky not to get something from that game against Real Madrid and Manchester City. Do you think Roberto Mancini is focusing more on the Champions League this season or not?
Well, I don't know. He was hurt. He was hurt against Real Madrid. There's no doubt. I mean, you saw the reaction when they went 2-1 up. He expected his team, any team that he manages who goes 2-1 up after 85 minutes, they do not expect to lose. I don't think that result really, he could believe it, and that really shocked him. And Dortmund, where they were lucky, I mean, the match looked 0-0 all over against Ajax. I watched it back. It was a very fortunate 3 points, and there could be incentive for in the other match, Ajax Real Madrid. Ajax will be. It's an interesting one because when you're playing for the third place, they're not going to be that disappointed, Ajax, if they end up being third in this group. The reason? The Europa League finals in Amsterdam next year, and that would be a nice target for them to aim at. They'd be more than happy with that. They'd settle for that now, and they always thought it was a tough group. They'll still have plenty to say in the group. Of course, they're playing Real Madrid in Amsterdam, and they've had some tremendous tussles down the years, those 2 clubs. But I would expect City to beat Dortmund.
Let's get the prices. Let's hear from the bet butler.
I think if you look for players per player and you look at form, I think Manchester City, although everyone's better at 3 to 4, but the pressure. This could arguably be one of their biggest games in their history. I think it's the biggest game of the season, certainly Fulham. I mean, after what happened at Real Madrid. And when that pressure was on last season, they failed to deliver in this competition. I know they won the Premier League with 2 goals in the last couple of minutes, a goal in the last couple of minutes, but the problem was the other game was already over. That's why they won the Premier League. That's QPR gave up. But anyway, enough about that. But Man City, whenever the pressure is on them in this competition, they don't do it. They didn't do it last season, and I think they're a team that you want to be very wary when everyone expects them to win, and I think that is the case here. Borussia Dortmund 19-5. They're going to the Champions of England. They want to put a performance unlike they did last season against Arsenal. They were very, very poor in that match. But the draw at 14-5, I just think City, okay, we all think they've got the players to win it, but when the pressure's on, have they got it? I'm not sure if they have.
City defensively good enough to win a Champions League, Angus?
Well, I think the rules...
Conceding every single game, aren't they, at the moment?
I would actually normally answer that question that they aren't, but I mean, the Champions League is just is a law unto itself at the moment. The form book and the rules just go completely out the window. And if you've made money punting on the Champions League, knockout stages, particularly over the last 20 years. You're very. No wonder the bookmakers think it's the best tournament in the world.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Yeah, the big thing with Man City is at the back, they've been playing 3, they play 5, they play a 4, but they score goals home and away. They can win any game against anybody on their day. Isn't that exactly what Chelsea did last year? I think Man City could go all the way.
Yeah, they're certainly priced accordingly. I think they've got a fair chance, but they've got to sort themselves out at the back for me. That's the football. Let's move on to Formula One, because the news that was announced over the last day or so is the fact that Lewis Hamilton, Angus, is going to leave McLaren. He's going to drive for Mercedes next season. Was this a surprise to you? Is it going to enhance his chances of winning future championships? Is it going to dent his opportunity to win it this year?
Well, I'll tell you, one man who'll have a huge smile on his face is Eddie Jordan, because he broke this story and he was adamant and he wouldn't retract it. He said, it's my story, I'm very happy with the source I've got it from. It's a done deal, he's going. Hamilton publicly came out and said he should stick to TV commentating and analysing. He doesn't know what's going on. It is not a done deal. It's not going to happen. What Eddie Jordan's saying is absolutely rubbish. Eddie Jordan then said, OK, fine, I'm happy to stand by my story. Now, he will have a huge smile on his face today, because the general feeling from within Formula One is that Eddie Jordan was right, but no one would back him up. Anyway, he's been backed up by Hamilton today, and it'd be very, very interesting to see how that develops. I mean, no one could, if you'd said at the beginning of the year that was a possible transfer, that it would have been more likely for Robin van Persie to have gone to Old Trafford.
Let's get some Lewis Hamilton specials, shall we? Let's hear from Nigel Seeley.
Yeah, obviously Hamilton's a big news, big sports story over the last couple of days. Hamilton to win the championship in the next 3 years with the Mercedes is a 7-4 shot. Obviously, they're going to have to do a lot of investment in the car to make it, but he's obviously been sold a lot of promises that they're going to do that and make the Mercedes car a force to be reckoned with. So obviously, it's not all about money, is it? Anyway, but 7-4 Mercedes to be in the next 3 years, I think that could be a decent little wager. But I don't really like putting money anywhere for 3 years. You know, I don't like that time. I want it in my pocket tomorrow, not that in 3 years' time. 7-4, that's what. But if you've got a few quid to invest in, that could be a decent bet. To win the 2013 championship, obviously with the Mercedes, is a 9-1 shot. I think you're going to have to wait and see what drivers are at what cars at the end of the year, who's doing well in practice. But I think this is a good bet. I think they will get it right within the 3-year window. But I haven't got money to tie up for 3 years. I know Flash has.
Do you fancy any of those specials?
Yeah, I like them both. I think 7-4 over 3 years.
Got to improve a bit, Mercedes, haven't they?
9-1. Yeah, but again, the technology is McLaren Mercedes. It's what people have got to understand. That he already knows the Mercedes technology. So now he's going back to is it Ross Brawn? I think it's a marriage made, and especially with 25 million extra over 5 years.
Would you take 7-4, 3 years?
I think it's fair, yeah. But I mean, not many punters. Most punters like Nigel, they want to bet for lunchtime, and they want to bet for the evening. They want to draw the cash the next day.
Does it, just very briefly, does it mean that his chances have diminished to win it this year because McLaren might not want to back him as much, or does that not matter?
I'd be surprised, but you never know. I mean, Formula One, anything could happen. I mean, there will be people who would certainly think that was the case.
Yeah, he's 9-1 to win it this year. Flash, you think his chance has gone? I mean, it looks like between.
Well, would you rather back him at 9-1 to win this year or next year? There's no doubt next year will be a better.
Well, that's what I'm saying. 9-1. I mean, you look at him. They're obviously going to do a lot of testing. They're going to get themselves further up the field, and I think 9-1's excellent. Yeah,
there's certainly going to be a better car for Lewis Hamilton to drive in the future. There's no doubt about that. Well, that's all we've got time for on this edition of the Punter. Many thanks to the bet butler, Nigel Seeley, and to Gordon Watson and Angus Loughran. From me, Dan Roebuck. It's goodbye.